And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's
Yeah! Let's go!
Welcome and thank you for listening. This is the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I am your host. Before we get into this week's topic, Brics, let's do a short roundup of the big news stories of the week. We're now only a little over 2 weeks away from the 2024 elections, and early voting has started in many states. Georgia has reported record numbers of early voters, with election officials claiming that the state has had over 1 million people cast a ballot as of Friday, crushing previous records. Georgia is a battleground state and expected to be close, with current polling showing a lead to former President Trump. Sources on that are The Hill and Forbes. Other states, such as North Carolina and Tennessee, have also reported huge turnout at the polls in early voting this week. Both Trump and Harris continued on the campaign trail this week, with billionaire Mark Cuban joining Harris by holding a series of high-profile appearances alongside Harris and her husband. Cuban joined Harris in Wisconsin on Thursday and will be joining her for a town hall in Phoenix on Saturday, then headed to Michigan. Cuban took the opportunity to take shots at Trump, saying that, quote, Donald Trump is the Grinch that wants to steal Christmas, bashing Trump's trade and tariffs policies. Meanwhile, Trump visited a barbershop in New York's Bronx on Thursday, where he was greeted by patrons and barbers wearing Make Barbers Great Again shirts, and he attended the Al Smith charity dinner on Thursday night in New York. Elon Musk has been joining Trump on the campaign trail this week as well, as the battle of the billionaires, Musk and Cuban, campaign for their respective preferred candidates. Keeping with the election-related news, on Thursday, Kamala Harris had an altercation with some pro-life protesters at her campaign rally in Wisconsin after someone shouted Jesus is Lord and some interrupted her. She responded by telling the protesters that, quote, they were at the wrong rally. She also reportedly walked off stage during a small rally on Friday, leaving an ABC News anchor at a loss for words. ABC cut to do live coverage on the campaign trail, and when they returned, Harris could be seen walking off stage, throwing her hands up, looking agitated. The anchor could then be heard saying, okay, in surprise. Harris was apparently being interrupted by a Hamas supporter that accused her of committing genocide. Speaking of Hamas in the Middle East, it was reported this week that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas and mastermind of the October 7, 2023 terror attacks on Israel, has been killed by Israeli forces. The Israeli Defense Forces said Sinwar was killed on Wednesday by soldiers in southern Gaza, but Hamas has yet to confirm his death. Israeli Defense Forces had vowed to capture Sinwar dead or alive following the October 2023 terror attacks, in which around 1,200 people were killed and 250 taken hostage. It is unclear what, if any, effect his death will have on the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. Former One Direction member Liam Payne died this week after reportedly committing suicide by jumping from the third-floor balcony from a hotel room in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Autopsy reports indicated that Payne sustained 25 injuries as a result of the fall and that there were no signs of a fight or struggle of any kind. Payne's body was found in the inner courtyard of the hotel, where he was pronounced dead on the scene. On Thursday, Payne's family issued a statement saying they were heartbroken and asking for privacy and space in this awful time. The University of California, Santa Cruz, sent out a massive email to all of its students this week, informing them of the school's decision to mandate both flu and COVID-19 vaccinations to all students. In the email, they said, quote, staying up to date with your immunizations is essential for keeping both you and our campus community healthy. They have set November 1st as the date at which all vaccinations need to be up to date. Really, UC Santa Cruz, I thought we were done with the forced vaccinations already. I'm sure in the event Kamala Harris were to win the election, this will be much, much more common. In our final news story of the week, on Friday, the entire island of Cuba lost power after one of its main power plants failed, according to Cuba's energy ministry. As of Friday evening, Cuba's capital, Havana, had had power mostly restored to around 20,000 of the 2 million residents. Cuba has long had issues with power outages due to the country's aging and poor infrastructure, as well as lack of maintenance and fuel. This probably isn't going to be a very long show, but I thought this was something we needed to talk about. But I will try not to bore you to death with financial talk. I'm not a numbers or financial guy myself, but I do get interested in subjects such as this that have far-reaching economic and social repercussions. I have been astonished at the number of people that I know that have never heard of Brics. Now, a lot of people don't really follow world news, but on this subject, you should. So this week, we're going to be talking about Brics. And what better time than this week, right before the annual Brics Summit. So what is Brics? Brics stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The term was initially created as BRIC, without South Africa, by Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill in 2001. From Wikipedia, BRICS is an intergovernmental organization comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. Originally identified to highlight investment opportunities, the grouping evolved into an actual geopolitical bloc, with their governments meeting annually at formal summits and coordinating multilateral policies since 2009. Bilateral relations among BRICS are conducted mainly on the basis of non-interference, equality, and mutual benefit. Many believe the goal of BRICS is to establish a new currency system that is an alternative and replacement to the US dollar. Every year since 2009, the member nations have held an annual summit, which each state or government leader attends. Each year, the heads of government take turns assuming the presidency, whose job it is to set the agenda for and host the annual summit. Russia hosted the first summit in 2009, and South Africa the most recent in 2023. Russia is the host country for the 2024 summit, which will be held in Kazan from October 22nd through 24th. Reportedly this year, there will be leaders from 24 countries and delegations from 32 nations attending. This is supposed to be the largest foreign policy event that has ever taken place in Russia. During its BRICS presidency this year, Russia has said it will focus on promoting the entire range of partnership and cooperation within the framework of the association on 3 key tracks: politics and security, the economy and finance, and cultural and humanitarian ties. So why does this matter? Well, we will discuss the financial and economic implications later on, but for now, just the fact that our nation's supposed 2 greatest adversaries, China and Russia, are member countries should be enough to raise your interest level. These countries want nothing more than to take control of the global economy. At the last BRICS summit in 2023, more than 20 countries expressed interest in joining BRICS. So we have our, again, supposed, and I say supposed because I'll be talking about who some of the good guys and bad guys truly are in future episodes, 2 greatest adversaries, and a growing number of other countries that are interested in joining. South Africa's BRICS ambassador has stated that as many as 40 nations have expressed some level of interest in joining. It has even been suggested that the BRICS nations could challenge NATO, which, as I'm sure most everyone is familiar with, is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and form a political and military alliance instead of just working toward shared economic goals. That is why we are talking about it on this show. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and this alliance is significant for many reasons. Devaluing the US dollar and altering the global market is just the start. This alliance has the potential to set the stage for World War III, pinning BRICS versus NATO. Obviously, this is a very early and vigorous assessment, but is it any coincidence that none of the BRICS countries are also NATO members? Now, everyone has their opinions on whether or not the U.S. should be in NATO, but the fact is, regardless of our status with NATO, this has been a big topic, which many people on both sides of the political aisle have an opinion on. Trump has stated in the past that he would potentially withdraw the U.S. from NATO, but during the CNN presidential debate on June 27th, he said that the U.S. would remain in NATO so long as European countries, quote, play fair, and, quote, NATO has to treat the U.S. fairly because if it's not for the United States, NATO literally doesn't even exist. And of course, Joe Biden is a huge advocate for NATO and the U.S. maintaining our membership and status in NATO, which many conservatives have blasted Biden for our massive spending and why he hasn't made other countries contribute nearly as much as the United States has. So this alliance essentially pins the European countries and the U.S. against the predominantly Eastern countries and major world powers that rival our military and economic strengths. So here are the players. NATO currently comprises 32 countries and Brics is currently 10. But look for Brics to grow exponentially in the next 5 to 10 years. So as you can see, the potential impact that Brics could have politically is massive. Let's talk about the economic impact that this could potentially have. For those not familiar, let's have a quick economics lesson. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference in England, 44 countries agreed to the creation of the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. The participating countries agreed to a system of exchange rates wherein each country pegged the value of its currency to the U.S. dollar, which at the time was convertible to gold at the rate of $35 per ounce. Because the U.S. economy had become the largest in the world following World War II, it made sense to use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency as it seemed to be the most stable long term. A reserve currency is a foreign currency that a central bank or treasury holds as part of its country's formal foreign exchange reserves. Still today, the U.S. dollar is the predominant choice for the majority of global reserves and remains the currency of choice for international trade. Major commodities such as oil are frequently bought and sold using U.S. dollars, and a lot of major economies such as Saudi Arabia still peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar. So is a creation of Brics currency possible? A lot of financial analysts say that the creation of the euro in 1999 is proof that a Brics currency could be possible. There are a number of obstacles that would have to be overcome first, though, including an agreement between the member nations to phase out their own sovereign currencies, the establishment of a new central bank in support of the International Monetary Fund. Member countries would have to set aside their own ambitions, especially China, who has been working hard to increase the power of the yuan internationally. But yes, it is entirely possible. So what does this mean for the U.S.? The short, simple answer is that in the future, especially if more countries join and sponsor the organization, is that it can potentially devalue the U.S. dollar and weaken our power globally. How could it do this? Well, with the U.S. dollar dominating the global market, it allows us to impose sanctions on other countries. You have probably heard on the news about the U.S. imposing sanctions on Russia after the invasion of Ukraine, as well as us imposing sanctions on other countries for various other reasons. If Brics were to potentially compete with or even replace the U.S. dollar, it would be a devastating blow to the U.S. on our global power and economy. So what can we do to prepare for Brics and its potential impact in the near future? Okay, so we've talked about Brics, what it is, how it started, and its potential implications for the world economy, and how it could potentially affect the U.S. dollar. So for us preppers, how does that affect us in the here and now and the future? The truth is that we are probably years away from it becoming a true currency, and if and when it does, it will probably take a while before the global market begins to embrace it as an alternative to the U.S. dollar. On one of my previous episodes, Prepping 101, I discussed how preppers should financially prepare for a potential financial collapse or disaster. These principles mostly apply, although should the U.S. dollar eventually lose any monetary value, precious metals will be the way to go. I highly recommend stockpiling silver and gold. Silver is cheaper and more readily available than gold, and since it is supplied in much larger quantities than gold, slight changes in demand can greatly affect its value. But for preppers on a budget, buying some silver coins for, say, around $30 each is a lot more appealing than buying gold coins for over $2,000 each. But for the committed prepper with a larger budget, gold has shown over time to be much more stable and has yielded by far the most significant gains. From 1990 to 2020, the price of gold increased by around 360%. Over the same period, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 991%. If we look now at the 15-year period from 2005 to 2020, the price of gold increased by 330%, roughly the same as the 30 years considered above. Over the same period, the Dow Jones Industrial Average increased by only 153%. Then if we only consider the years 2021 and 2022, gold has outperformed stocks as geopolitical uncertainty and inflation increase worldwide. Another cheaper option is bronze, but bronze is a man-made metal and its appeal and applications are generally more for art and sculptures. I would suggest everyone do their research and keep an eye on the news and developments surrounding and regarding Brics. All right, that's my show for this week. I hope I didn't go on for too long for all you non-financial folks out there like me, but this is something that everyone needs to pay attention to and follow. This may significantly reshape the global financial market in the coming years. So keep tabs on what's going on with Brics. Knowledge is power. Thanks as always for listening to my show. I hope you'll join me next week for a paranormal episode just in time for Halloween titled The Most Haunted Places in America, where we will explore the reported haunts and the history behind some of our country's most iconic places. Until then, have a great week. Please remember to like and follow the show on social media, Facebook, X, and Truth Social. And please, if you know people that would enjoy my content, please pass the word along. Until next week.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.